Hey, what's up, guys? This is David Chase Taylor of 911truther.org. Today is June 18th of 2026. So, based on breaking news and events, it appears that CIA headquarters located beneath CERN at Lake Geneva in Switzerland is going to stage a full-scale Russian armed forces-based attack and invasion of Ukraine on the morning of June 19th of 2026, specifically to trigger all-out World War III. If you've been following the news of late, the Ukrainians have become increasingly belligerent with their drone attacks targeting St. Petersburg over what they call Putin's Davos, the St. Petersburg Economic Forum last week, and then this week they targeted a bunch of oil and gas related infrastructure as well as Moscow, and the aesthetics of it look very bad because you have the skyline of St. Petersburg and the skyline of Moscow with black smoke billowing into the skies. And so the NATO-backed Ukrainian armed forces have put Russian President Vladimir Putin in a particular situation where he is being forced to essentially act. Not to mention that a couple weeks ago, the CIA staged a three-wave of 16 drones in three different waves attack targeting a Russian dormitory at a university, which resulted in the death of 21 Russian college students. So basically, this current situation has given Putin really no out in this particular situation, because if he doesn't act, he's going to lose support within the Kremlin, obviously with the Russian people, and then if he does act, there's the high possibility that this could trigger an escalating war. And with the Iran nuclear deal being signed between the United States and Iran less than 24 hours ago on June 17th in Versailles, France, the Zionist establishment is just foaming at the mouth to basically trigger World War III, and this appears to be the only real active war that's ongoing, and so they have to basically escalate it if they're going to achieve their goal of essentially triggering all-out nuclear World War III. So coincidentally, the date of June 19th, aside from the fact that Ukraine is being led by a Jewish Zionist named Vladimir Zelensky, who is a cocaine addict, who is being backed by NATO, the numerology surrounding this impending earth-changing event on the date of June 19th, of course, has the numeric signature of the CIA who is orchestrating it, starting with the date of June 19th, which is 619. The number 6 is reflective of the six-pointed star of David found on the flag of Israel. And then, of course, the number 19 equates to the letter S, which is an acronym for Switzerland. So these are the first Jewish state, Switzerland, founded August 1st, circa 1309, and the third Jewish state, who has been secretly arming Ukraine, is going to stage basically the beginning of World War III on this particular numerology. Not to mention the date of June 19th is the 170th day of the year, and the number 17 equates to the letter Q, as in coup d'etat, because this is essentially a coup, because it's going to overthrow the current world order, because it's going to ultimately draw both the United States and NATO nations into a hot conflict with Russia almost instantly. Coincidentally, the date of June 19th also marks 276 days since the CIA staged Operation Zapad 2025, which was 350,000 Russian armed forces massing in Belarus, which of course borders Ukraine, where they executed a CBRN, chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear exercise back on September 12th through the 16th of 2025. The number 276 features the number 26, which equates to the letter Z in the English alphabet, which is an acronym for Zionism, and that is in fact the motivating force behind this impending attack. Also, the date of June 19th marks exactly 1,738 days since the CIA staged Operation Zapad 2021, which also featured 350,000 Russian troops massing in Belarus back on September 10th through the 15th of 2021. Obviously, again, the number 17 equates to letter Q, as in coup d'etat, and then we have the number 38, which equates to CH, which is the acronym in Latin for Switzerland, which is Confederation Helvetica. The date of June 19th marks exactly 2,587 days since Vladimir Zelensky became president of Ukraine, and since his inception as president of this country, we have seen an unwillingness to negotiate a peace treaty with Russia, and his belligerence as head of state by suspending elections and engaging in terrorism and war crimes against his own people and that of the Russian Federation. He is essentially going to be likely imprisoned in some sort of a trial, not to mention all the financial scandals involving. So he basically is selling out in this particular case. It also marks 1,576 days since the CIA staged the latest Russian attack and invasion of Ukraine back on February 24th of 2022. And of course, this number has the number 17 again, which equates to letter Q, as in coup d'etat, and it has the number 16, which is indicative of the 16-pointed star found in the logo of the CIA. The date of June 19th marks exactly 4,502 days since the CIA staged the Russian so-called annexation of Crimea, Ukraine, back on February 20th of 2022. Obviously, the number 42 or 24 equates to the letter X, which is known internationally as the symbol of death. And then if you take the number 5, which is symbolically an S, and then it spells SX, as in 6, because this is a Zionist plot to essentially trigger World War III. It also marks 5,156 days since Vladimir V. Putin became president of the Russian Federation for a second time back on May 7th of 2012. And again, this number has the number 16, which is again reflected in the 16-pointed star of the CIA. And lastly, the date of June 19th marks exactly 33,646 days since the Jewish Autonomous Oblast, which is JAO, was founded. This is the second Jewish state after Switzerland, which was founded in the far east of Russia, roughly 700 miles north of North Korea, back on May 7th of 1934. This is important because the number 33 equates to CC, which is how chemical weapons and biological weapons are measured in quantity, and then it has the number 66, or 2 sixes, which equates to the letter Z in the English alphabet, which is an acronym for Zionism. So exactly how this is going to play out in reality is obviously not known, but based off the previous Zapad 2021 and Zapad 2025 World War III exercises executed by the Russian Federation in neighboring Belarus, the term Zapad translates from Russian into English as west, but they're in fact going to go south into Ukraine, and they're going to, I believe Putin is going to rid Ukraine of any sort of future threat to the Russian Federation. This will obviously likely trigger the de facto activation of Article 5 within the NATO treaty, which states that an attack on a NATO nation is an attack on all. And I believe, based off the meetings that Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has participated in, both NATO meetings and G7 meetings, the latest of which was in Evian, France, ending on it was on the 15th through the 17th, and I believe that this is where this that it's highly likely that Ukraine became a secret member of NATO, because if they can trigger Article 5, which the number 5 symbolically equates, symbolically speaking, is an S. So this is the 19th, this is SS, this is indicative of the CIA headquarters located beneath CERN, like Geneva, whose secret name is ISIS or SS. And this triggering of Article 5 within the NATO treaty would instantly bring the United Kingdom, France, Italy, Germany, and the United States into war with Russia, who will likely defend them. Not only is the United States and NATO nations selling weapons such as the Flamingo cruise missile and the Storm Shadow cruise missile to Ukraine, but they are arming them, as evidenced by the British Armed Forces paratrooper George Hooley, who died in a training accident in Ukraine just a few months ago. So you have active NATO forces training the Ukrainians. So if Ukraine is attacked, then this is a green light for NATO to basically unleash all-out war on Russia, which is why they previously tried to stage an attack targeting Kaliningrad, the enclave of Russia on the Baltic Sea. So this, obviously, this war, this impending war, is going to trigger. It's designed to trigger a Russo-NATO war, but ultimately it's designed to trigger the mutually assured destruction scenario, because once NATO turns on Russia, then Russia will likely use nuclear weapons of sort, likely against Ukraine, possibly Germany, possibly Poland, and possibly England and France. So basically, we're going to have nukes dropping all across Europe. There's also the possibility, based off the recent propaganda and, of course, the military drills by the Russian armed forces using the new Skyfall missile, which is basically a nuclear-powered cruise missile developed by the Russian armed forces, that we could see Putin launch a plethora of these particular missiles into Ukraine at the onset of this altercation, which is likely going to transpire on the morning of June 19th, Friday, June 19th, 2026. There's also the high possibility that once the attack commences, that Israeli forces or other NATO forces would secretly bomb Ukraine with weapons that are banned by the international organizations of the world, namely the United Nations, likely featuring the massed dispersion of choking agents, blood agents, nerve agents, and other chemical agents that have been banned to make Putin's response to Ukraine appear far worse than it is. But the end result will be the same, all-out nuclear World War III. So if this in fact transpires on the date of June 19th as expected, I would kindly ask that you download this video and share it with local, state, and federal law enforcement, military, and intelligence officials, as well as with local, national, and international media outlets. Peace.